So the book I chose to do for my independent book project was New Boy by Julian Houston. In the book New Boy by Julian Houston, the main character was named Rob Garrett. Rob Garrett was an African American boy that moved to a different school, which was a white school, to get away from the negativity in the South. Once he moved, it was trouble for him because there wasn't anyone but white people that went to his school, which caused him to be the only African American. The society was so messed up back then, everyone was separated. The New Boys demonstrated with hate, racism, and trust. Research of the author. Julian Houston was born in Richmond, Virginia, educated in the public schools of that city before attending the Hotchkiss School in Lakeville, Connecticut. He attended Boston University and was a community organizer in Harlem during the Civil Rights Movement. He is now Associate Justice of the Superior Court of Massachusetts. Julian Houston lives in Brookline with his wife and family. He was also a judge with a long background in the Civil Rights Movement. Julian Houston says he decided years ago that he would like to try writing fiction. As the first African American student in the history of Draper, a prestigious Connecticut boarding school, 16-year-old Rob Garrett has a chance to break barriers just like the heroes Jackie Robinson and Joy Lewis. Intelligent, determined, and ambitious, Rob is also eager to work hard and prove himself. I would have to fend for myself, and I was thrilled by the prospect. More research of the author. The result is New Boy, a graceful and moving debut novel that the author hopes will help young readers understand that America was like what America was like in the days of segregation. From what I read, plenty of people loved the book New Boy because it was an old version of how people act today, which gives a good idea of how people should actually act. So the plot summary of the New Boy. Rob Garrett moves away from a black community to all-white school to have a better education for himself. He learns quickly that as long as he keeps quiet, life will be easy for him at his stay at Draper. Over time, people start to pick on Vinny, Rob's best friend. They make fun of him because he's Jewish, has an acne problem. Eventually, he moves away, and Rob doesn't want what happened to Vinny to happen to him. Later in the book, Rob meets Malcolm X, and Malcolm tells him when he goes back to school to put himself out there and to be different, but nice to people also accept colored people as the same as them. He takes his advice to heart, and people accept him eventually. The literary elements and characterization. The setting. Segregated America, late 1950s. This is important because it shows how things were back then by addressing the year. Back then it was racism, and that's how it was in the book. Theme. Racism. A quote is, accustomed to feeling constantly threatened by whites, blacks, homes, and segregationists. Virginia. Rob is surprised to find little over prejudice directed at him. Instead, Rob witnesses the boy's abusive treatment of his friend, Vinny, whose New York City background, Italian heritage, and severe acne make him the brunt of cruel jokes. This shows the ridiculous racism which Rob Garrett does not deserve. This also shows that Rob has been talked about and bullied by white people, which is unacceptable. And it's really unacceptable from his friend as well, especially for him being innocent. And that was found Houston 26. Symbolism, which I thought was trust. It was cheaper for one thing, for another. The white lawyers couldn't be trusted. I love this quote because it says a lot about the white community and how African Americans have to fight for themselves because the lawyers doesn't like them, and because of the African American, they have to fight for themselves and do whatever it takes for them to get above and beyond. Okay, next, more literary elements and characterization. The character I chose to analyze is Rob Garrett, which is the main character. What is obvious about the character is that he wants freedom from the South and have a better life. Dialogue I chose was, and this could be my only chance. Thought about the friends I had left behind, the South, and crammed, sad lives they seemed detained to lead the hollow trapping of the maternity. What this is saying is that Rob Garrett hated that he left his friends for a community like this, which is sad. Which he did not know that he was going into a community that's what's going to be worse than the segregated America. He did not know that. So my personal opinion for this book is this book was awesome, had good morals, it taught a valuable lesson. I would rate it about 4 or 5 overall. It was a good book, but some parts got a little bit boring, but it did show, how some people acted back then in the 1950s. Yeah, and it was a great book, yes. And conclusion, Rob Gary was a nice boy that was 16 years old and wanted freedom. Without freedom, he didn't know what to do with his life. All he was trying to do was get away from the bad, but instead he ended up back to the bad when he moved. The book The Boy is presented by Hate, Racism, and Trust. And I wanted to do a connection, as everyone know, even though this was due like a long time ago, the Floyd, how everyone is protesting and racism coming back against the like white police officers. What I think is it's really ridiculous, but at the same time it shows back then how everything was going, and now it started from back then until now, which should not be happening. But yeah, so that was the connection I had with Floyd and then to now. And here's my sources. Thank you.